Doom Eternal is a great game, and at the same time has so many things to complain about that you will not watch this video in one sitting. Let's take combat for example. There is so much going on that if you haven't played the game yourself, there is a good chance you won't be able to tell what is happening on the screen. The player is double jumping, dashing and swinging all over the map. The blood is spilling everywhere. But if you played it yourself, you will notice that this combat system has a really nice learning curve to it. You will start with just one weapon. The pop-up tutorial will do a pretty good job with explaining the basic mechanics like glory kills. Your combat options will gradually increase every time you learn something new or get a new gun. The game will give you some room to practice new moves. There is even this training room where you can, well, train killing monsters between the actual missions. And that's all great. So where is the catch? Let's start with that. Game treats the player like an idiot. One of the most obvious examples is the fact that every time you encounter a new enemy, the pop-up will appear, informing you about its weak spot and overall the most optimal strategy. I'm not kidding. Let's imagine a scenario. You are playing Doom Eternal, and on your path, a red cacodemon just spawned. You hate this enemy. It killed you so many times. His spawns were, in many cases, pretty unfair to say the least. You prioritize killing him first, so you take on your grenade shooting shotgun and open fire. To your surprise, one of the grenades lands right into his white mouth and explodes in his insides. This way, you've practically one-shotted this monster, and it feels so great. After all this struggle, you found out a way to one-shot kill him, and it feels rewarding as hell. Sadly, that's not the case in this game. Before the player will even have the opportunity to fire at him, he sees this, and that's the case with almost every enemy with some form of weak spot. And it would be so rewarding to discover all those cool details and strategies yourself. Finding that you can disable Arachnotron's turret with one accurate sticky grenade or sniper shot. Same with Revenant's rocket launchers. Or that you can quickly destroy Cyber Mancubus' heavy armor with Blood Punch. The bosses suffer on that as well. Can you imagine fighting a boss where, before the fight even begins, the game would tell you, aim at this glowing part with an energy weapon to break his shield, or at this lower part to deal more damage. Or, here is this boss's moveset, stay mid-range and attack him before this certain attack. And in case you'll be even more dumb, we made it so his eyes will light up green every time you will have to shoot. Learning all those things yourself, bosses' movesets, weak spots, attack patterns, is what makes the fight interesting and satisfying. Even dying while trying because you didn't know there is secret item to defeat the boss is an important part of experience. And I know you can disable those tutorials, but this way all tutorials, including those essential ones, are disabled. New part basically. Another problem that I have with Doom Eternal is that it's really boring, simplistic, and it's trying to hide that by throwing at the player about 4 or 5 means of progression at once. And although they seem complex on paper, in reality they don't bring anything new or interesting to the table. Let's start with the more controversial statement. Why is it boring? One word: encounter design. Well, those were technically 2 words. An encounter consists of 2 important factors. What enemies are spawning and what's the layout of an arena that we fight in. I have to admit, maps in this game are, in most cases, really solid. You have a lot of platforms that you can hop on and off to avoid incoming fire. Swinging bars are an amazing addition that, while combined with double jump and double dash, will let the player kill dozens of demons before hitting the ground. Portals and jumping platforms can be used to quickly escape from enemies. To sum it up, most of the maps are giving the player many options to how he wants to face the challenge. I'm constantly repeating the phrase most of them, and that's for a reason. So there are those Slayer Gate challenges. They are optional encounters unlocked after finding the secret key in the level. Beating all 6 of them gives you a new weapon, and 2 or 3 of them share the same map. While playing them, you can really see the difference between fighting in fresh and new maps and fighting in what is essentially just recycled content. If all encounters had shared the same map layouts, playing the game would quickly become simply boring. If not for a map design, then why the hell it's so boring? Enemies. It's all because of the enemy design and enemy variety. To put it simply, for over half of a game there is not enough enemy types to make interesting and memorable encounters. Many of you watching this shitty video will now probably ask politely, what the hell are you talking about? Hear me out here. Some sources are stating that there are about 27 different enemy types in this game. I counted 28 on my second playthrough. Compare it to a game like Dark Souls 3, where you can fight over 130 different enemies, not to mention the bosses. Or even Hollow Knight. In this game, you can fight more than 150 enemies. I'm more than aware that Doom Eternal is a different type of game. It's a first-person shooter. But I thought that this genre consists of 3 main elements. Shooting, we haven't talked about this one yet, but it's pretty solid in Doom. Map design, and enemies that we fight. And unfortunately, 28 enemy types isn't enough for a 20-hour game. Not to mention that among these 28 enemies, there are a lot of repeats and reskins. There are 3 enemies that I would hardly call enemies, 5 imp-like small projectile shooting enemies, 5 large shooting enemies with breakable weak spots. Yeah, I know they look very different, but the basic strategy to fight them is basically the same. 3 rushing enemies, well, 5 if we count the Pinky and the Ghost, but I wanted to be generous, so they are in different category. 2 Pinkies, 2 Flying Tomatoes, and 7 enemies that are different enough that I'll count them separately. That gives us total of 13 enemies, not counting the reskins of course. Please remember that even though I tried to follow some rules while grouping them together, like how the player would approach fighting them and avoiding their attacks, this list is still very subjective. Despite that, 28 or 13, this is still very low enemy count. You can take any encounter from any of the first 5 levels, Hell on Earth, Exilita, Cultist Base, Doom Hunter Base, and you can be almost 100% sure that every enemy that appeared so far will spawn during this fight. This design philosophy weakens the whole experience so much because every time you fight exactly the same groups of enemies, with only differences being the map and the order in which they spawn. It is only after we reach the second half, or 2/3 of the game, that you can start to notice some encounters that are at least somewhat memorable thanks to original enemies. But to be honest, for me, this game is all about fighting the same 15-20 enemies over and over, just in different environments. One of the solutions to get rid of this monotony would be having enemies restricted only to certain locations, or better, just one location. The Urdak level is a great example for that. The Maker drones appear only on this planet, and this makes this level and the fights so much memorable. Now is the time I should probably say something positive about the enemies. So here we go. Breaking the parts of certain enemies is very satisfying. So shame the tutorials spoil the whole fun of discovering that yourself. Karas, the enemy that spawns shield in front of itself but also other demons, is brilliant. I believe that it's the only enemy in the game that actively synergizes with other demons by covering them when they need it the most. And in general, The enemy AI is really good. They chase you, hop on platforms to get better aim, but they never rush at you. Well, not all of them at the same time at least. Next episode, I don't know how to call it. You may be angry at me saying all that. After all, you didn't feel boredom during your playthroughs. And you didn't feel it because of many artificial things that the developers added to trick the player into feeling of constant progression. I'm talking here about all those ways to upgrade you and your guns. So, during the game you can collect or earn by doing some challenges 4 types of currency, which you can then spend to upgrade your character and weapons. 4 types! It is even more than in some free-to-play mobile games like Clash of Clans. This alone creates the feeling of constant progress and the feeling of earning something valuable, while in reality there are so many of those points in game that even if you're not exploring every nook and cranny and don't complete every challenge, you will probably still have max level character and weapons by the end of the game. Please understand, I am not against light, but in this case I should probably say heavy progression systems in video games. Nor am I saying that giving player the freedom to choose between more ammo and more health, or faster grenade recharge, or having 2 of them instead of just 1, doesn't belong in a Doom game. The only problem that they have is that they should have put more focus on making the core elements of the experience feel great. You can have an awesome FPS without an upgrade system, but you can't have an awesome FPS without awesome enemy encounters. And in my opinion, the fights, when it comes to the enemy variety, suck. Okay, so maybe let's talk about those currencies, how you can obtain them and what you can buy for them. Weapon points, as the name suggests, allow you to upgrade your weapons. I will talk more in depth about weapons later in the video. You can get them by simply playing the game, but also by finding and completing secret challenges and encounters that you have to complete within specific time limit. I'm not a big fan of time challenges in games, so I won't tell you if they are good or bad. The other way to get weapon points is to complete mentioned before Slayer Gate challenges. In game, you can earn about 120 of those points, and you only need like 110 to fully upgrade your all weapons. So you don't have to complete every encounter to fully upgrade your arsenal, and that's good. Next are mastery tokens. Those allow you to skip mastery challenges for a selected weapon. For example, after you bought every upgrade for Sticky Bomb shotgun, you will get a challenge to complete for final upgrade. Destroy 25 Arachnodemons turrets using sticky bombs, and instead of doing that, you can simply spend a mastery token. There are 7 of them to find throughout the levels, so you will still need to complete most of the challenges if you want your weapons to be 100% upgraded. Next, we have Predator suit upgrades. Those lets you upgrade, well, your suit. Things like grenade cooldown, faster dash recharge, quicker weapon swap, no explosion damage, well, you get the idea. You find them in levels. Some of them are secrets to find and some are just on the main path, so player won't miss them. The last type of currency is a sentinel battery. So there are those locked cells on your main ship, and in those you can find different points to upgrade your character. To unlock each cell, you need to spend 2 sentinel batteries. As you can see, this way player can choose what type of upgrade point he wants to buy for those sentinel batteries. And that's pretty interesting idea. If you wonder, you can find them in levels, but also get some by completing special level challenges. Besides those 4 currencies, you also have 3 more ways to upgrade your character. This gives us total of 7 means of progression. Isn't that kinda a lot? In some levels, or in those locked cells, you can find panels. After interacting with them, you can buy one of 9 runes that grants you different abilities like inner slow motion. There is another type of panel. This one is with a glowing crystal inside, which lets you upgrade in yet another way. You have 6 different passive upgrades and player can put up to 2 points in each buff. Besides those passive upgrades like faster flamethrower recharge, you also get your ammo, health or armor permanently increased depending on what skill you've bought. If that confuses you, don't worry, you're not alone. And there is one more thing to cover: modbots. Those fellas allow you to unlock alternative weapon modes. Things like sticky grenade launcher for shotgun or sniper shot for heavy cannon. Doom's Eternal upgrade system is a total mess and a game design ADHD in its purest form. I'm not saying that it shouldn't have one, I'm just trying to say that it's overly complicated and it takes away the player attention from what is, or rather should be, important: enemies, shooting, encounters in general. And when your attention is drawn away from poorly designed enemy encounters, it's harder to notice small variety and poorly designed fights. The last problem that I have with this game, I hope that it's the last point, because the script just hit 2500 words and I've never written so much in 3 days before. But after playing Doom for past 2 weeks and finishing it twice, I felt so inspired and I simply knew I have to make this video. So the last complaint is, there is so much content reused from previous Doom game. Like really, weapons? All of them besides Unmaker copied from Doom 2016, and some of them doesn't even look that different. Of course there are some differences. Shotgun now shoots sticky grenades instead of normal ones. Plasma rifle, besides minor visual redesign, now has a lasso mod instead of stun bomb. But don't you worry, they didn't get rid of stun bomb. They redesigned them so now they are freezing grenade, which, well, stuns enemies. What else? Gas cannon is now called ballista, and the attack that after charging penetrated multiple enemies is now, well, this attack is basically the same except now it's wider. Now I wrote something like that in the script. The only new things that are, in my opinion, worth listing out are, but to be honest, besides things that I'm about to cover and those mentioned before, there is not much new in this game when it comes to the Doom guy's arsenal and his moveset. Double barrel shotgun now has a hook. Player can use it to quickly close the distance or to move faster using it like a Spider-Man uses his web. And it's pretty damn cool if you ask me. Another great addition is a flamethrower. Player can use it to set enemies on fire. When enemy burns, he drops armor pieces, and if killed while burning, he drops a lot of them. It's a great idea, but you could argue if it's original. In its functionality, it is basically glory kill, but you get armor instead of health, and glory kill wasn't their original idea as well. If you didn't know, they ripped this concept from one of the original Doom modders. Oh, I almost forgot. While we are the topic of armor and health, don't you think that armor is just an extension of your health gauge, added simply to create the illusion of more variety in collecting different healing items? Well, if you have any doubts about that, in Doom Eternal there is now third health bar. It's called Radiation Shielding Suit, and can somebody please explain me the purpose of that in this game? That is, other than to simply create the illusion of meaningful content. I get the idea that you have to collect it in order to survive in locations with toxic waste, but the suit reappears in the same place quicker than it depletes. So what the fuck is the point of this shit? I apologize for a small digression. Where are we? Alright, flamethrower. It's cool, and I'm glad they added it into the game. The dash they've introduced to the game is amazing. It clearly belongs in a fast-paced movement shooter like Doom, but to be honest, there is not much to talk about here. It's a double dash. I believe there are some iframes to it. It's a great way to get away when you feel overwhelmed by enemies rushing at you, but the player can't just spam dash button. First, it has a cooldown, and second, due to first-person nature of this game, to dash backwards or even to the sides, player must be familiar with the map layout first, otherwise he will just hit the wall. The swing sticks are pretty cool and interesting idea. They basically let you stay in the air for longer. They add more variety to the player movement options. And that are probably all the new things in Doom Eternal. There is so much content reused from previous game when you come think to it. I would guess that about half of the enemies are copied paste from 2016 game. Some of them, like Revenant or Mancubus, are given breakable parts. And that's it. Practically every weapon in this game is the same as in previous title. Understand that I'm not saying that it should be 100% new and original content. Dark Souls 3 in some places is really similar to Dark Souls 1, with its locations and even some enemies reappearing. But Dark Souls 3 still has a lot of fresh ideas, new weapons, ton of new bosses and cool looking locations. Doom Eternal has only new cool locations, maps that are greatly designed, but what are amazing levels without interesting opponents? Another part now is, okay, so remember to edit this out. Now let's run through some leftover stuff that I wanna talk about for a minute or two. The final boss, Icon of Sin, is really well designed. Yeah, some of its attacks are pretty hard to predict and it kinda stays in the same place almost all the time. But you know what's so great about this fight? That it fits into the premise of the game. It's a shooter, and you kill that boss by just shooting at him. No need to wait for some green-eyed window to attack. No need to collect blood punch to damage the boss. You just have to shoot it with all you got. And that's pretty cool. The parkour sections are okay. There is not a lot of them and they are not overly complicated. Wow, you're still here. First I wanna thank you for clicking into this awful thumbnail that I made and watching this video. It was my second project this large and I hope it wasn't that boring. I really tried to make my points straight and clear. Before we hop into conclusion, I wanna ask you to share your opinion on the subject. Did you play the game yourself and have noticed some things I failed to mention? Maybe I have just criticized your favorite game and you want to tell me how wrong I am. That's all fine. I'm open to criticism. I'm all about improving my writing and critical thinking skills, so if you have a spare moment, write your opinions in the comment section below. Also, like and subscribe if you can. That is, of course, if you want. And yeah, it's gonna help me a lot. Thanks. Back to the video now. Doom Eternal is a good game. I recommend you play it. Its map design is brilliant. Weapons, even though pretty much copy-paste from its previous title, are still amazing. I would even say that they feel better than in the Doom 2016. I only wish that they had added more enemy types to the game instead of this weird ass monstrosity which is an upgrade system. If you played Doom 2016 and haven't picked Doom Eternal yet, just don't be surprised by abundance of weird content. And well, good luck with managing all that chaos and ADHD which is this game and its design. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your time. To the next time.